All right. So welcome OPSM. I have Jesse Falanga beside me. Now he's not on the opposite side of the screen.
Yeah, thank God.
And we also have Ross Embleton, head coach of Leyton Orient. So thank you for taking the time, Ross.
Thank you for having me on.
Perfect. I guess the first question for you is, how's everything going now that football's starting up? How busy are you right now at this moment?
I think the first and the most important thing for everybody is that at my end, everyone's fit and healthy and well and sane, I suppose, is the other strand to it all in terms of what we've all come through and where we're at. So that's obviously really important. On the flip side of that, we are busy in terms of, I suppose, I don't know what it's like for yourselves, but we've got a furlough in place in this country, over here with a lot of the businesses, which is obviously been a huge government initiative and a government support, which has meant that I think businesses have stayed afloat rather than disappearing into the distance. And we're no different to that in terms of the level that we're at and where we're at and heavily reliant on it. So I'm restricted in terms of the work that I can do for work and for Leyton Orient. But what I've tried to do along with the staff is to try and stay motivated, try and stay switched on and focused on what's going to help me be better at the job when we do get the opportunity to return. So fairly busy, albeit not in an official capacity, I suppose.
Yeah, Ross, I was going to ask, thanks again for being on the show. But in terms, I know Leyton Orient is a very community-based club. You guys have, it's a very much a working class, club. How is this, whole time period going to affect you guys moving forward? And, just what are your thoughts on, how you guys are going to be able to come back and, be stronger?
I think certainly we are an incredibly community-based club. I mean, I grew up watching the club. I grew up playing for the club as a young player. So my family have a strong attachment with the club. So to be manager or head coach sort of fits with that theme. And there's a lot of clubs across the world, I'm sure, that sort of rely on that tag of being a community club. But we are very, very focused on making the most out of that environment. Our chairman is a former fan, so there's a real strong connection with a lot of people at the club. And I think that one of our biggest focuses, certainly from mine, but I know the board and the hierarchy at the club, is to sort of come out of this period, albeit, everyone's going to be a bit wounded, whether that's personally or financially from a club's and business perspective. But I think the important thing is to come out of it ready to embrace whatever it looks like. Yeah. Because I think there's going to be a lot of people that are hindered. There's going to be a lot of people that are restricted. Transfers in terms of comings and goings of players are probably not going to quite look how we all thought it was going to look before we went into this period. But I think if you come out of it feeling sorry for yourself or overpowered by what's happened, I think it's only going to be a little bit more negative. I don't feel as though we're going to get the right response. So my message to the players, my message to the staff, and now I'm going to try and carry myself, is that we come out and we embrace whatever it looks like and try and make the most of it. Training's going to look different when we first go back, but I think go into it with an open mind and try to make the most of those situations, and then you've got nothing to blame it on. If it goes wrong or if it doesn't, if you don't hit the ground running immediately. Yeah.
Ross, what I wanted to do is tracking back. When did you start, realizing that football was something that you wanted to do? Even just on a managerial standpoint.
I think football for a lot of us is something that we all want to do from the minute we get a ball at our feet. Yeah. I look at how packed my life is with football now, and I was always, when I had my little boy, I was always very keen that he wasn't involved in football. I wanted to find another sport for him to be interested in, so it gave me a bit of a break, but it didn't work. I've got a boy at his feet, and he loves it just as much as the rest of us, and I think that shows you where the tag is at. I think I played like most of us would have done as a kid, and was, focused and hopeful that there would be a career in it for me. But I know looking back that I wasn't good enough, whether that be physically and whatever else, meant I wasn't at the level capable of earning a full-time living and salary out of the game. So on the flip side of that, it made me very fortunate that I went into coaching at 15, 16. When I say coaching, it was very loose in terms of, looking after 4 and 5 year olds and picking them up, tying their shoelaces, trying to make them have fun whilst playing football. It wasn't this comb there, run there, wear that bib, do this, receive the ball like that. I wasn't a coach. It was more just trying to give kids a good time. But for me, I started at 15, 16. So I felt I started really, really young. And where a lot of people that I knew, were still really focused on their playing careers, I was really focused on my coaching career from a very, very early age. Yeah. Which, like I say, from my perspective, I feel has really benefited me. When it comes to management, I mean, I don't know how much you know about the history of my situation. I was at Leyton, Orient, I left, and I've been back for the last three and a bit years. Mm-hmm. And I've had 3 spells of being the interim head coach. Yeah. And the big thing for me was that I felt that assistant manager was always the real major strength of mine in terms of my coaching background. The access to coaching that I had, the way I worked with players, the way I could work for a manager, was something that I really enjoyed, but something that I really thrived upon and where I felt my skills were really strong. But we had a change of manager this season, and I'd had the opportunity to take the job on a permanent basis, and I didn't want to do that. And then when the second sort of managerial change came around, I sort of started to refocus where I felt that I wanted to go, and the opportunity come up again, and I've sort of decided on this occasion to try and grab it with both hands. And I feel as though since I have done that on a more regular basis, it's helped me. Yeah. I think it's helped my players. It's helped the club and the supporters and everyone's attached to it, that there's someone at the top, fixed, making those decisions and trying to drive it forward. So it's been quite a new experience, but one that I feel as though has gone okay since I've gone into it on a permanent basis.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Before we touch on just what's going on with the club in terms of ups and downs, I wanted to ask just about you personally as a manager. Of course, there's a ton of football managers in England, and it's not easy, of course, to make it even into the football league and into the professional ranks. For you, what really helped you, or what were the things that defined you to put you where you are today?
I think hard work, like anything, with anyone that wants to be successful, or wants to not even be successful in terms of what you achieve or where you get to. I think actually wants to be successful in terms of getting into the roles that they want to get into. Mm-hmm. Hard work is at the forefront of everything. And I talk to a lot of people, and they still say now that football in this country is about who you know, and being in the right place at the right time, and catchphrases really. I don't feel as though that is necessarily the case. I feel as though you have to be good, you have to have strengths, and then you have to be committed to and dedicated to what it is you want to do, and then your connections will help you. But I don't think you can have all the connections in the world, but if you're not driven, if you're not hardworking, if you're not good at what you do, people are not going to put you in a position of a real strong position within a club if they don't feel as though you're capable. So I think that's incredibly important. I think the commitment to being rounded and having a wide spread of experiences. So for me, I don't have a playing background to fall back on. I don't have a name of Ross Embleton played for 100 games for Chelsea. That's not me. So I've got to have something else that attracts people or makes me stand out from other people. So I think that my variation of skills in terms of the different types of coaching that I can do, I can work with senior players. I still coach my son. I still work with 4 and 5 year olds in soccer schools in order to not to make me any better, but because I love it. Yeah. I've got a passion for it. So I feel as though that's what's going on. And I think the biggest thing for me personally is I do feel as though I've got quite a strong and it's quite a skill in terms of working with people and connecting with people. And I do strongly believe that if you've got that and if you develop that, the longer term, you've got a real chance of being successful in anything. It's got nothing to do with football. It's got it's not a direct thing that you would put towards being successful in business. I think widespread across the board, if you are good with people, if you create a good environment, if you give people the opportunity to come to work every day and enjoy and love what they do, you've got a chance of being successful in anything that you choose to go into. So I do think that because of the widespread of experiences I've had, that's quite a big strength of mine. No. I hope it is anyway.
Yeah, no, Ross, that's very wise. Thank you. I think that gave us a little bit more motivation for our day. So, back to the club and what's going on, with you guys internally in terms of just success and results. You came in this year as interim manager, and you guys were able to, I guess, even play a bit better. What are some of the things you changed when you came in, or what are some of the things you saw that you thought first immediately that you had to change?
Well, I think because I'd been part of the coaching team before I became the manager, sometimes it's quite hard to see what needs changing because you've been in it all the time. Walking in the door, new ideas or fresh approach. Sometimes I've worked for managers at this club that have walked in and gone, why do we do that? Or simple things like, why do you have the office arranged like this? Simple, basic things that you recognise. But being there every day for 3 years before you go into the role, it took me a little bit of time to sort of have that reflection to say, what is it we really need to do to evolve and get better? Mm-hmm. And I feel that the way the game is going, there's obviously a real strong focus these days on sports science. Analysis has become better in this country and better within football than it was. I think some sports are a long, long way ahead of football, both in this country and across the world, but we are catching up. So I felt those were two areas that we really needed to develop. We've got a small workforce, but I think a skilled workforce and a hard-working workforce that I was really keen to make sure that they all developed. And because they were knowledgeable people, I felt that I wanted to give them the authority or the freedom to go and develop their departments. So I've put a lot of focus on those areas in order to try and show the players that we're evolving and we're changing a little bit more, because stepping into the role, we'd been successful under the previous manager. And it's very hard then to evolve something that you've been successful within. So we sort of started to focus on those. And then now where we feel we've got to over a period of time is, albeit we didn't start the season particularly well, once my job became permanent, what I feel that we did really well was we began to discover what our identity was. So for me, it was about the formation that we were going to play. We recruited well in January, albeit only 1 or 2, but we recruited players within what we were becoming and what we wanted to be about in the positions that we felt we really needed to nail down. So, like I say, we sort of started with those staff-related things where we created a different type of environment that suited me as a head coach and the staff that we had, showed the players what we were trying to do. And then in recent times, we've started to tweak a few little things that we feel are going to help us be more successful at a better level with the players that we've got. Because ultimately, that's what it's about. It's not about me saying, I want to play 4-4-2, and this is how we're going to go about it, and then not have the personnel to do it. So we looked at the good attacking players that we had, the types of defenders that we had, and then we felt that the 4-3-3 system would be the one that helped us to evolve and get better. And it started to in the latter part before it ended.
Yeah. Ross, to touch base on that. So obviously in the season, there's a lot of ups and downs, basically from on a whole collective standpoint of from the team. You know, the team's winning, everyone's on a high, the management's feeling good, everything's going well. But what are the things that you do, or how do you manage the team in the sense that when things are not going so well, where, you know, you're on a losing streak of 2-3 games, what changes in the management standpoint in that sense?
I think consistency is important. I worked for someone years ago who used to say to me, you need to make sure that you, as a coach, stay on an even level of behaviour. I'm not sure that is always the right way.
Yeah.
I understand the principle, that you don't get too carried away when you win and don't get too low when you lose, of course. But I do think at the same time that there has to be this little bit of an up and down, because ultimately you go into sport to win. Yeah. So if you win, you should enjoy the moments. And I don't feel as though I do that well enough at the moment.
Yeah.
I feel as though when we win, it's almost like, right, what do we do to keep hold of this and get better?
Yeah.
Whereas when we lose, I actually feel as though I manage the defeats quite well, because I know that I'm going to analyse everything in order to try and put it right.
Yeah.
So I feel like my work ethic increases in order to do that. But like I say, going back to that theory that I was told years ago and the principle behind it, I do think it is really important to be consistent, so that when you lose a game, you don't all of a sudden feel as though you've got to change everything.
Yeah.
But when you lose, it's important to analyse why you lost, but analyse what the performance looked like. Because in football, certainly in this country and certainly at the lower levels, I feel as though, because there is a big turnover of managers, and you know, people's staying in a job isn't always a lengthy period. Yeah. People are obviously desperate to win, and it is about winning at the end of the day. But for me, it's about how you win, and it's how you lose. And I think if you lose and you analyse that your performance wasn't too far away from what it is you're striving to achieve, and what were the things that let you down in order to lose, then I do feel you got more of an opportunity of building wins over a longer period of time. So you might not get the immediate short-term success, but I feel as if you really focus on what your performances are supposed to look like, you have more chance of achieving it on a more regular basis. And for me, that reflected how our season went this year. And I know that there was periods in the year when I talked after the game, and I'm quite open when I talk to the press and I do my interviews after the game. And sometimes I was saying to people that I was quite pleased with the performance today, and I could feel that the guy interviewing me or the supporters that were going to be listening to it were thinking, is this guy crazy? He lost. But I knew that if we kept on the right path and the right track, that we might have a chance of coming out the other side, and I feel that's where we started to get to.
Yeah, Russ. So my question, you spoke a bit about the supporters. Now, I know the last few years have been very tough, being a Leyton Orient fan. So how do you temper expectations? And also, what are your expectations for the club moving forward? And do you feel that the club can maybe get back to the position that it was in?
Yes, I do. I do think, to answer that question outright simply, I do think we can get back there. And I think that the great thing about our club is that the board and the owners of the club are realistic in terms of the timescales it takes to get there, and realistic of the damage and the suffering that the club has been for over a period of years, how hard it is to get back to that after that. Yeah. It's not just a case of, right, we're doing this, we've got new owners, so everything's going to be great. It's patience, it's building over a period of time in order to get there. So I do think we can get back to that. I think what is very difficult is trying to manage people's expectations, because football fans want to win, and that is all that matters to them. And I've been one of those, so I'm fine with that. But what you also get, I think, at the same time is as fans, we forget the process that it takes to get there of what I just mentioned there. So I think it's about trying to, when it does go well, that it's not all going to be, right, we're going to win the next 10, 15 games, we're going to get promoted, we're going to win the league, and it's all going to be rosy. But we also do have, I think, a responsibility to recognise where people want us to get us to, so we don't avoid the question. So I think that's the real big thing of saying, but we finished where we finished this season, and it's part of a building process. No one wanted to finish 17th in the league, and I don't think we would have done if we'd have played the last 10 games of the season.
Yeah.
No one ever knows that. We never will. But next year, it's a case of saying, right, now we're not going to go from 17th and win the league. It'd be great if we do, but the building process is, right, now we need to finish in the top half. Now we need to make sure that our aspirations are to achieve more than we've achieved this season.
Yeah.
And how we deliver that message is, again, about me delivering consistency, the players delivering consistency. The messages that come out from the club from a media perspective is that this is what our goals are, that we finish in at this level, and we're not going to try and get there too quickly. So the board, when they took over, all said that they wanted to give themselves 3 or 4 years to get out of the National League. We got out of there in 2.
Yeah.
They wanted to be back in League One within 6 or 7 years. So now what that gives us is a 4-year period to get to that goal. So I know that as a manager and a coach, that's what they want to achieve. The supporters have been told that.
Yeah.
It's now what the building blocks look like to get there. And not underestimating that, okay, we got out of the National League in 2, but it doesn't mean that we're going to get out of League 2 in 1 year, 2 years. It might take us 3 or 4. So it's maintaining that consistency and not getting too carried away with how you portray yourself to everybody, I think.
Yeah, Russ, talking about the team, obviously going into the next season, obviously with preseason and everything like that, what are the things that you look for in a player, specifically to a striker, a midfielder? What are the characteristics as a player? What are the, like, when you're building a team, what are the things that, you want to be a winning team?
I think it's a brilliant question, and people can take it as like a simple thing to have to answer because we all say good players or this or that. I think you have to be specific, and one of the things that we never had as a club was any sort of profiling on what a Leyton Orient player looks like.
Yeah.
One, because the club was taken over in difficult circumstances, so we probably never had the time to recruit the types of players that we wanted, and it was about getting the best players we could at that time. And now we feel like we're 3 years into the planning and the progress that we can now start to put together a profile of what players a Leyton Orient player looks like. And I think, obviously, it's position dependent, but I think these days everybody needs to be athletic. Yeah. Everybody needs to be able to run long distances at high intensity for lengthy periods of time. So I think that's a set attribute for everybody, whether it's a goalkeeper, and that's the first thing that I laid out to the staff and to the recruitment people of when we recruit from now on, athleticism is what it has to be there. So don't come and tell me I've got a left winger and he's athletic. I don't care. He has to be athletic. If he's not, I don't want him. Do you know what I mean? So now, obviously, player A might be quicker than player B. Player B might be able to cover more distance. Player A might be able to sprint for longer with more intensity. So they might be more agile. I think footballers, certainly in this country, have become more agile in the last 5-10 years. So they'll have their own attributes on an athletic level, but I do think that there is a certain level of expectation for every player now. But then I think going through it positionally, I think goalkeepers now have to be, again, athletic, but they have to be able to play with their feet. They have to be able to hit a range of passes. They have to be able to start an attack. They have to be able to slow the game down to a certain level, because that's how the game has become, and they have the ball at their feet a lot more. They rely upon a lot more from that perspective. So I think that's a massive part of what they do. And I also think players in this country have become bigger in the last 5 or 10 years. So goalkeepers have to be 6'3" now. 6 foot. The days are gone of goalkeepers being 5'12", 6 foot. You have to be incredibly athletic to survive at that size now. I think from a defender's perspective, again, everybody needs to be comfortable on the ball. They have to be technically able to play under pressure. Whereas again, years gone by in this country, you were able to be, as a defender, just be able to put the ball somewhere on the pitch. Whereas now you need to be able to do that. You need to be a midfield player that's dropped deeper.
Basically.
But I do also think that, again, referring to football at our level, you have to be able to head it as a defender. You have to be able to deal with a physical bombardment that you get in this country at our level. So I think that's, again, another big attribute for, if you were looking for the whole package as a League Two player, you would say, I want him to be comfortable on the ball. He needs to be athletic. He needs to be able to head it. And then I think when, obviously you can cover fullbacks and that varies a little bit in terms of the attributes that they need to have. And I think right backs, left backs these days have to be able to play in the final third. They have to be able to cross it. They have to be able to create opportunities for people to score, because they're like modern day wingers, really.
Yeah.
And then I think that for me, the midfield positions are very, very specific now. I think a lot of players, a lot of teams across the world operate with a defensive midfield player who is also very comfortable on the ball, because I think, again, because of the way the game's become, they have to be able to do that role. And then midfield players now, I do think that for us, we play three in midfield, and I think the players that operate higher up the pitch have to be able to score. They have to be able to create. They all have to be. For me, the game has gone so far now when you look at the profile of the Modric, Xavi, Iniesta, among some unbelievable others, but the ability to turn, the ability to be able to stand the ball and beat players, be able to play 1v1 has become more of a midfield attribute than probably it was 10 years ago, because those guys have changed what football looks like. So I think years have gone by, those little players like that, you would have played them out on the wing and they'd have been able to play 1v1. But now they're central midfield players who can run, they can tackle, but they can also turn quickly, play forward, beat players 1v1, stay on the ball. I think that, like when you work with young players now, you talk about players being comfortable on the ball, but when you look at the profile of those players that I've just mentioned, they're just happy to be on the ball in all different areas of the pitch. They're comfortable, they can chill it. The phrase I use when I talk about people like Luka Modric is I say that he just hides the ball. It doesn't matter where he receives it. If I go and press him and go and put him under pressure, he just hides it. He just keeps it in a place where I just can't get to it. So it doesn't matter how big or strong he is. I just can't get to the ball because he knows how to manipulate the ball. So I think those attributes now, even at our level, are comparable. And then for me, strikers and wingers, if you put them all in the same category, the 1v1 ability is for me incredibly important. I think speed or explosive speed is incredibly important. And I really like the variations that you can get now, but from a number 9, my number 9 plays down the middle of the pitch on his own. But I do think that you need to be able to play with your back to goal, but you also need the ability to be able to run in behind defences. You need to be able to make the pitch bigger for other people to play. So I could talk about it all day long because I love it. But,
no, it's brilliant, Ross. This is what we love.
Yeah.
This is what we love.
On those things. And then I think the great thing for all of us and for the three of us, it would be different. If I asked you the same question, because all of a sudden you say, do I want a left-footed winger that can play on the right, or do I want a left-footed winger that can play on the left? And do you have a player that's very good at 1v1? I'm lucky that I feel as though I've got those players that can do that, that can play on both sides of the pitch or could play down the middle, some of them. So it's very, I think the difference is at our level, you're not always quite as specific as probably they are at the very, very top because of the players that you can attract or the ones that you can actually go and recruit.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, this question then is for you, and it's going to be a little bit of a tough question. When are you guys going to win the World Cup?
What was really interesting that I read something yesterday. Someone, I don't even know who it was, where it come from, but someone said that he'd made a statement that in the World Cup 2022, I think it was, that England were going to make a real stance in the World Cup. And I think whether it's that one or it's 2022 next World Cup, isn't it?
Yes.
Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Well, I didn't want to lose track. I know the Euros have been changed.
Yeah.
I think we got a real good chance of that being a big one for us. And I think not only because we've got better tactically and we've got better players around the England squad now, I think in recent times our players have had a lot more exposure to the very best level of football, which for is the Premier League, is amongst the very best. We've got more players playing more matches at that level, which I think is incredibly important. I also think a massive thing that's probably missed a little bit is how well structured our football association has become now. Yeah. So I feel as though if you are a young player going in to play for England under 17s, 18s, 19s, there's a common theme, the way that the teams play, what's being asked of them. And then on top of that, those age groups have been performing well at World Cups, at tournaments. Yeah. So now our young players are not only getting the exposure to playing against the best players in the world, but when they go to play for England at whatever age category it is, they're performing in tournaments. The best young players are not just being put in the under 21s or taken in the first team squad because they're very, very good players. They're almost sort of held in those categories in order to give them tournament experience. And I think that's going to prove to be really, really important. The likes of Phil Foden, who probably doesn't play as much for Man City at the moment as he would like to.
Yeah.
He probably gets more exposure for playing for England and winning the under-17s World Cup. And so that when they get to that 2022 or 2026, whenever it might be, those players are all going to be a lot more experienced, but for me, a lot more capable than players in years gone by. And I think we had a wave of Beckham, Lampard, Scholes, Gerrard, where we should have done more, but they probably hadn't had that exposure to play in tournament football together. Yeah. Whereas I think we're probably a little bit better prepared, and we seem to have a manager that sits on top of it all that has a real idea of what all of those structures look like in order to make it a little bit more realistic. So I'm not going to tell you that it's going to happen in 2022, but just reading that thing that I read last night, I wish I could say where it came from, but reading that last night really sort of gave me the belief of actually why does this guy think that we can get to that level.
Well, I wish you luck. With the tournament expanding, it won't be easier.
That's right. It's going to be a lot more football. Be great for us because we get to watch a lot more games over that time.
There you go.
It's unfortunate for the players. Fixture congestion is going to be something.
Yeah, and it's going to be really tough over the next year or so, isn't it? In terms of the way leagues are going to be restructured because of what's happened and starting later and that sort of thing. It's going to be tough.
Yeah. So go
ahead. So I'll do it. So to end it, we like to have a little fun with our manager and just put them through a Q&A. We're going to go up to the spine of the team. We're going to ask you to choose between, some player legends, especially some English legends, and we'll see what guys you choose to have in your squad. Yeah. So, center back
from any period or from now.
Period, but mostly the period we remember watching football.
Yeah. And Jesse's gonna ask me, and Jesse are gonna ask the questions, and you just have to pick.
Just to shoot off. You might have to give us a why if we don't agree with the calling. So at the spine, Rio Ferdinand or Tony Adams, center back.
Rio Ferdinand.
Rio Ferdinand?
Yeah, Rio Ferdinand for me,
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
I just think everything with him was the full package.
Nice class play.
All right, in the midfield, Paul Scholes, Frank Lampard, or Steven Gerrard?
Whoa. Paul Scholes.
Simple.
Paul Scholes, because I think Paul Scholes could do everything.
He
could score. He completely changed his game at the back end of his career. He went from being a goal scoring midfield player to a deep holding midfield player who started attacks, for me, could do all those things that I talked about when I said about Xavi, Iniesta, Modric. Yeah, all goals.
All right, well, the number 9 position. I know you guys have a ton, so we're gonna simple. Michael Owen or Alan Shearer?
Oh,
Now in
Alan
their
Shearer.
prime, of course. Okay.
Alan
Alan
Shearer.
Shearer.
He's a Liverpool fan, so this is hard for him.
Yeah, Alan Shearer. Do you know what? I think both of them obviously suffered severely with injuries. In their careers. I just feel like with Michael Owen, when he lost his real explosive speed at the back end of his career, he found it hard to be something else.
Yeah.
So he was successful at Man United, coming off the bench and getting goals. And his goal scoring ability you would never question. But I just feel like Shearer had a real bad knee injury and a few other injuries through his career.
Yeah.
And he just managed to find another way of staying at the level. So become a bit more of a target man and good in the air. Maybe just as a bit more of an all-round package. From what I would like from a number 9, I would go with Shearer.
Oh, brilliant. And then lastly, who's managing the side? Ross Embleton?
Whoa.
Uh-oh.
Do I get another option or is it just me?
That's up to you, boss.
I think for me, the best around anywhere, not English. I think if I had to choose any manager anywhere, it'd be Pep Guardiola.
Yeah.
I think that one, because he's gone and so he works at Man City with with the best facilities, the best budget, some of the best players in the world. People would argue he had the same thing with the Barcelona players, but he's revolutionised football in 3 different countries for me.
Yeah.
And when he's had enough in Manchester and he goes on to wherever else he goes next, I think he'll revolutionise it again. So whether he actually wins everything, so obviously he needs to win the Champions League at Man City. I don't think he won it at Bayern, did he? But I think that just what he does to change the style, the approach to football, and the way that, for me, if you watch his All or Nothing programme that they've done on him, the way and the relationship that he builds with his players, there's like a love affair with it. And Klopp's very different, but I think he builds that relationship with them as well. But for Pep, just the way he is and what he done at Barcelona, it was unimaginable, the type of football that they play.
Best football club, best football. Iniesta, Xavi, that was Busquets,
Messi,
David Villa. Yeah.
And you know what he did as well? You know what I love the most is that he did what he did with the style of football for Barcelona, where for me, they just strangled you every week.
Yeah.
They just destroyed that. When I say destroyed, they just demoralised everybody that they played against in the manner that they played the game, and yet had the most talented footballer there's ever been, potentially.
Yeah.
That they dominated the ball in the way they did, and then they had this little guy who just destroyed everyone even more when he had no space. That would be the man for me.
No, but Russ, I appreciate you taking the time to be on this Opsm podcast. We really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it.
And we thank you again.
No problem. If there's anything you need or anything like that, drop us a line and I'll do everything I can to help.